A moment of significant change or a turning point, altering your course, is known as an inflection point. In business, these moments have a significant impact in many ways. That's why we're speaking with leaders from across the asset management industry to hear the stories of their inflection points and the impact they've had on their journeys. Join me and my colleague Mark Spina as we explore the business of being in business, with insights that can help you wherever you may find yourself. This is Inflection Points.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for listening in again to another episode of Inflection Points. Thrilled to continue to bring some what I think are just incredible guests from throughout asset management here, spending time with me and my colleague Mark Spina, talking about the business of being in business and their career inflection points, what brought them to who they are today, what they've learned along the way. And I am incredibly thrilled today to be joined by a friend, fellow woman in ETFs, and head of product of Fidelity Digital Assets as of just a couple of months ago, Kelly Yee. And could not be more thrilled to have her here today talking about her journey to the US, her journey throughout her career, and what led her to today. So with that, let me welcome Kelly Yee to join us here on Inflection Points. Thank you so much, Kelly.
Thank you, Jillian, for having me. It's always great talking to you.
Absolutely. Likewise. I'm just thrilled to do it. And Kelly and I, just to sort of bring it home, Kelly and I have known each other through an organization that is, I think those listeners know, is one that's quite important to me, and I'm very passionate about. Kelly shares that passion, and we actually met through the Speakers Bureau, which is, I think, an incredible part of Women in ETFs that really helps elevate the voices of those members. So knowing Kelly's journey, I thought it'd be really interesting to have her on today. And so why don't you go ahead and just maybe tell us where you are today and what you're doing at Fidelity?
So Jillian, I currently work at Fidelity Digital Assets as head of product for the digital asset management business. I had 15 years of traditional finance experience in product and research roles across asset classes in both the sell side and the buy side. I caught the crypto bug in 2017 and made a formal transition from TradFi to DeFi about a year ago.
Okay, that's fantastic. And so, talk to me a little bit about. I want to take it back a little bit. Well, a lot of it back to your more formative years. You are not from the U.S., so obviously, I think there's a lot that we can talk about as it relates to, your formative experiences and up to and including your move to the U.S. and what that did and what impact that those things had on kind of bringing you to where you are today, and ultimately the career journey that we'll talk about here as we go through the conversation.
There's a long journey for me to travel all the way from China to here. But anyway, I grew up in Nanjing, which is a big city in China.
Yeah.
I was fortunate because, I had the rigorous academic training as you typically see in Asian countries, but also has exposure to a lot of extracurricular activities.
Okay.
Well, I studied English when I was in first grade, which is rare, in China in the late 80s. And I even acted in a reality show when I was a teenager.
Were you really?
It's like a reality show version of Home Alone. So they unleashed this nerdy kid, which is me, to the real world, where they gave me a job as a sales rep in a department store, and they set up different traps and watch me sort of how I navigate different challenges and make mistakes.
That is awesome. What a fun experience. Oh my goodness. And you obviously are incredibly intelligent, incredibly bright, directors of research, MIT. There had to be something early on, to your point, very good education. But was there something in your mind that led you to want to take that path? Was it math, science? Like, what was it as a child, do you think, that really led you in this direction?
Born to be a very curious kid. I always want to sort of solve real world problems. So when I was in college, I had my maths degree in Peking University in Beijing. In my, I believe, junior year, I heard from a professor that there is this international math modeling contest. So I recruited two of my best friends, and we spent like 4 days, barely slept, and we developed a model and a computer simulation to solve a challenging cancer optimal radiation treatment problem. So from that experience, and we actually won the first prize, which is surprising because it never happened at school, and we were competing with like MITs and West Points of the world. So that experience really taught me like, and I really enjoy it in the sense that you raise your hand for a new challenge, creative problem solving, and teamwork, which all manifests itself in the later career of mine. So that experience, as you mentioned, brought me to MIT, and I was really fortunate to interact and study with all the smart people from all around the world. And it gave me certain appreciation of really diversity of thoughts and understand where they are coming from. That's really a truly eye-opening experience. So I started doing internships when I was in MIT in my second year, and one thing led to another. I decided to leave my PhD program and join Wall Street for the full time.
Wow. It's interesting because I have a cousin that went to Yale, and when I would go visit her, I did notice that I went to a Jesuit college in Ohio, and I would go to see her at Yale, and the diversity of individuals leading to the diversity of thought I thought was really powerful at Ivy League universities like that. That was just different than the experience that I had, and so I can appreciate where you're coming from there. Before we jump into that, which is a pretty meaningful departure to leave your PhD program to join Wall Street, especially as a woman, right? I think you and I both talk about this quite openly, the challenges that women face as part of Wall Street asset management, et cetera. Was there anybody, let's think about your parents, your siblings. Was there something that was instilled in you very early on? Did your parents encourage? I mean, it's not every kid that, is called the nerdy kid and goes on a reality show. Like, did your parents encourage this active learning and sort of push you in a certain direction in terms of encouraging this constant thirst for knowledge?
When I reflect back, my dad is an engineer and my mom is a teacher. So I think one thing they do differently, and I try to do it myself as a parent, is that they never force me to study hard. They respect my opinions, and they give me the freedom or the long leash to do whatever I like. And they never really told me or showed me that because you're a girl, you can't do anything. So in fact, I'm the only girl in my undergrad program for the specific major, which is applied math. I'm the only girl in the MIT PhD program, so it's possible, like working with men, but I never really thought because I'm a woman, I'm different. So
you were the only woman in your PhD program at MIT.
Yes.
Wow.
It's a program though, so.
That's pretty unbelievable. So if I think about, right, you made this transition from China to MIT. That is not a small change, right? That is not an insignificant decision that one makes. What were some of the things that went through your mind? What were some of the guiding lights that helped you make that decision? And what were some of the challenges that you faced when you first got over to MIT?
I would say I still remember vividly when I flew to US in the Chicago airport. I was trying to order McDonald's, but I was so shy to speak English, although I learned English for so many years.
Yeah,
right?
You said you learned it in first grade. Yeah.
Exactly. But the first step in speaking to a true English speaker is a little intimidating. But I think I'm naturally a very curious person, and I always have an open mind. So when I was at school, I tried to just talk to everyone, right? And MIT being, although it's a very rigorous academic school, they have all sorts of different activities to encourage social interactions with students. My favorite one is actually roaming around the common kitchen and ask each student, what are you cooking? And try to get some free food from there. And also start a conversation, which is how you learn about culture, right? Starting from food.
Yeah. That's really great. I love that. Naturally curious. That's come up a couple times in our conversation. I think that knowing you, I think that certainly makes a lot of sense for me. So when you decided to make the departure from your PhD program into Wall Street, I guess what was that catalyst, and where was that first move for you? How did you uncover that opportunity?
Well, I remember I did my first internship actually trading hybrid mortgage-backed securities in 2006. That's when the market is really hot, right, in terms of derivatives and securitized products. And I was fascinated by the aspect of dealing with uncertainty and use math and data to solve real world problems, which is very refreshing from academic perspective. It's more longer term and more theoretical. So, and then I did another internship, and I really want to work in a fast-paced place where I can see how my work is making a real-world impact.
I think that's what's so interesting, because there's a lot of stuff that's done in academia, but doesn't necessarily translate into the real world. So for you to have the opportunity to do that is pretty powerful. So from the internship, let's talk a little bit about how that translated into some of your first roles within research.
Yeah, so it's interesting, right? So I did internship in the popular go-go years, and when I actually decided to move, I joined the industry at the beginning of 2008, which is when the financial crisis started to unfold. And I joined in the very industry that brought the whole system.
So you were in fixed income, right?
I was in structured credit, actually, creating all the CDOs. But anyway, I had first-hand experience witnessing the financial innovation as a double-edged sword. So when you think about it, right? So if financial innovation done in the right way, it's really creating sort of innovative ways of slicing and dicing risk to offer that to different market participants, right? But if doing wrong and if you don't understand the risk, then the consequence can be catastrophic, right? So, and then for me to think through later in my career, right? After that experience, I went to Goldman. I had a long career in fixed income, building models for evaluating bonds, right? I was always thinking, what's the best way to do responsible innovation, right? So, I mean, Jillian, you're an ETF veteran. You remember those days when ETF becomes so popular and the smart beta concept comes in. I was thinking, why don't we do smart beta fixed income? At that time, there's no products, and people are still arguing whether fixed income can be implemented in an ETF format. But I truly believe that if we have good investment strategies, active in design but passive in implementation, we can really disrupt the industry. So that's when when New York Life IndexIQ opportunity come along, they really want me to help them expand the product lineup from just liquid alts to fixed income equities, and I really have fun there.
So, because I'm really intrigued, because you've talked about innovation and innovative products, and that's a theme for me that really sort of ties itself through your career up to where you are now, and sort of being on the front end of some of the innovation that's happening. Where do you think, as you look back on your career, has it been back to those more formative years where you've been able to sort of see forward as to where the innovation is coming and really focus on some of these more innovative ideas? And then I'd love to understand, sort of in line with that, is there a mentor that's kind of helped you throughout this journey, right? As you think about trying to stay on the front end and taking advantage of new opportunities that come your way, is there someone that's been your advocate or that's guided you along that?
Yeah, I mean, there are so many different people that I am very thankful for along my career, right? I mean, when it comes to innovation itself, a lot of times nobody has a crystal ball, right? I think what I'm trying to do, and I'm thankful for working initially in bigger companies, is the amount of resources where not only allow you to learn very fast and learn from all your colleagues, but also give you a platform to learn from different businesses, right? The fact that I'm only in fixed income doesn't mean I cannot learn about equities, right? And the fact that I have experience both on the sell side and buy side really give me a holistic view of how the whole financial system works. And in terms of people, I always have, I was fortunate, I always have mentors who are encouraging me to do innovative things and not have to worry about sort of, oh, are you doing what your job is requiring you to do, right? I think for me, the model has always been try your best in doing your work, but always have that antenna that's connected to the broader business, right? And trying to understand how my work is making an impact for the broader organization and where are some of the areas where there are interesting work going on.
Of course. Now, you made another large pivot, right? I think about the pivots you've made in your career, right? You leave your PhD program and go to Wall Street, certainly at an interesting time. You spend all these years at New York Life IndexIQ. And then you decide to move to crypto, right? And to go over and take this spirit of creating innovative investment products, and take a risk yourself and make the pivot to CoinDesk to run research there. What was it about the opportunity that made you want to make that departure from something that was so familiar to you, right? And to take that risk? And what sort of guiding lights did you have to help you determine if that was going to be the decision that you wanted to make?
It's not entirely unfamiliar to me, right? Because if you remember IndexIQ, the biggest product is actually liquid alts. And
Right.
just a few years ago, right, we were still in the equity bull market. Where do you find liquid alternative solutions that generate return with low correlation to equity market, right? And liquid, because ETF, you can't do private equity.
Mm-hmm.
Started to look at Bitcoin in 2017. And the more I go down the rabbit hole, the more I realize if you think about the blockchain, right? It's not just the technology, which, computerized trust is great, right? But it's what the technology can do that's really fundamentally changing how we're going to work and live in the future, right? And that fascinated me. So for example, right, the whole Web3 concept, when you think about it, it's really just creating a business model to allow creators to monetize their creation without having to rely on an intermediary.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think about the DAO concept, right, decentralized autonomous organization, it's really giving us a framework to allow communities to self-govern and do something interesting. So imagine, like, in the future, right, we as human beings, we are no longer bounded by where we live or work, but bounded by common shared interest in doing interesting stuff and have a way of govern ourselves and monetize our creation. I think really that's the future. So that excites me, right? I think the future is, various ways of digitization. And that's why I want to make a transition to really work in crypto in full time.
Mm-hmm. And how did the opportunity present itself?
So I feel like one thing is always linked to another, right? So working in the ETF industry, a lot of the, Jillian, you are ETF veteran, right? A lot
Yeah.
of the ETF people are really innovators and
Yeah.
moving to the crypto space well ahead of me. So I'm always like staying in touch and looking for opportunities there. So when this opportunity come along, I feel like it's exactly allow me to do what I was doing. If you cross out ETF and put crypto in, that's
Totally.
what I do.
Yeah.
But what's exciting is when I was there, we developed this taxonomy, right, which allow us to classify the top 500 digital assets based on their use case and really provide a roadmap for investors to understand crypto, right? So me coming from a TradFi background, I climbed up this very steep learning curve, learning the nuances of crypto. And I feel like the next step of more adoption really comes from TradFi people taking the time to learn crypto, but also crypto native people trying to, promote crypto in a framework that TradFi people understand, right?
Yeah.
So I was joking with the young analysts on my team. I was saying, you guys are great. I learned so much from you. But a lot of times it's like, I feel like you are talking Spanish. I'm talking Chinese. No matter how good your Spanish is, I can't understand, right?
Yes.
So I feel like there is a great need to connect dots between TradFi and DeFi. And me having, studied and worked in both areas, I really want to be the translator. I work for a platform where we can have the greatest impact to bring crypto into mainstream.
Yeah, just the fact that you're using the term TradFi, like I had never heard that until we started talking today. So you're speaking Spanish for me at the moment.
For traditional finance.
I know. I eventually caught on, but yeah, I can appreciate that. What we were going from an enormous organization, right, to a smaller organization, and now you've then now pivoted to another large organization. What challenges did you face before we sort of shift to your transition after a fairly short period of time at CoinDesk to Fidelity? What were some of the challenges you faced? Sort of, not only were you shifting industries, right? Clearly the role felt similar to you, right? Like you said, cross off ETF, insert crypto. But I have to imagine there were challenges that you faced, kind of going from a place you had been for quite some time, very large infrastructure, to something a bit smaller. And are there particular, you know, thoughts, people that you leaned on in order to help through some of those challenges in transition?
Yeah, I feel like it's not entirely different in a way, right? Because when I was in IndexIQ, we are a relatively entrepreneurial team
Yeah,
leveraging a bigger organization.
true.
And even in CoinDesk, right? It's a startup, but it's a startup in a very mature, established fintech firm, part of digital currency group.
Yeah.
So when I go back to Fidelity, I really appreciate sort of the opportunity. I mean, where on earth can you find the opportunity where you have an established organization with deep-pocketed traditional finance expertise, right? Combined with not only just a willingness, but also the walk the talk attitude in terms of actually setting up a business to do dedicated to digital asset. So I think that's huge, right? So I think sort of this is a perfect platform for me, again, coming from TradFi, wanting to do DeFi and leverage the platform, because I know if Fidelity is out there we're not only doing product, right? We want to do product in the right way so we can bring the whole community along. So I think that's really what's going to drive the mass adoption in crypto.
Yeah. As you look back at the different transitions that you've made, and again, there have been many, and they've been significant, and obviously have led you to where you are today and the person that you are today. Are there certain things that stand out to you? Are there certain, you know, like the inflection point, right? That really stand out, that you kind of hold true to yourself, and that sort of helped you get where you are today as you think back through all the different pivots you've made?
I actually go back to my formative years, right, when I was doing the mass modeling contest. I think truly as it manifests through my career is the fact that you want to always raise your hand for new challenges, right?
Yeah.
Because no matter where we are coming from, right? Even in Fidelity, I'm excited to go to work every day because I have colleagues who are either Fidelity veteran with deep operational expertise, or traditional finance leaders who has been like my boss as a head trader before.
Yeah.
It's the fact that you don't all the skill sets are transferable, right? If you have the ability and the will to do things right, it doesn't really matter what type particular job you're doing. So definitely raise your hand up for challenges. And the second part is creative problem solving, right? So every problems are different, right? But if you look beyond the asset class or the type of strategies you do, really it comes down to what is the problem? What is the problem you're trying to solve? How you're going to solve it, and why this problem is important one to solve, right?
Mhm.
So, and lastly is teamwork, right? I would never survive without an awesome team. So,
Mhm.
as I rise through my career, I was fortunate to have mentors. And when I became a manager, I always want sort of people working for me to really, respect me because of what I can do for them. And also I inspire them to do the best, because especially in this day and age, right? Young people, they're not just gonna work for you because you pay them. They want to feel excited to go to work, and they want to feel they are making an impact, right? And lastly, I feel like my volunteer experience, Jillian, as you talk about women ETF speakers bureau, or I serve on the board for CFA New York. I think
Mhm.
joining those type of nonprofit organizations really broadened your horizon, right? So from the outside, I'm volunteering, I'm donating my time, but I benefit more from that by knowing the awesome people I work with, and really work toward a mission that I think, like promoting women's voice or promoting financial education, is just so important. That makes you excited every
Y-
day.
I think all of what you just said, I've just been sort of writing them down. I think they're really, raise your hand, creative problem solving, teamwork, the nonprofit work. Those are just really, really important things, I think, for folks to take away, especially as I think about women in ETFs and women in the industry in general, just the encouragement to raise your hand. Not be afraid to raise your hand for something that you may not fit every single bullet point criteria of a particular job opportunity, right? Take the risk. And I think you've done a good bit of that in your career. I think before I move on to the sort of the last question I have for you around where we are in the journey of crypto, I want to maybe pause for a minute on women in ETFs, because I think more so on your network, right? And the importance of building and nurturing a network. and what that's done for your career, and helped you kind of get where you are today, and how you really approach that network. Because I think, especially now when we're all separated, we're not traveling as much as we used to, not seeing each other as much as we used to. Is there anything that you've done in particular to continue to grow and nurture your own network?
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, network usually grow organically. I try not to force it, right? But I think a lot of times I get the question, oh, how do I get a mentor? Sometimes it's, a matter of raising your hand and ask, right? People genuinely want to give advices. The other part is, I think the only way a relationship will work is it's beneficial for both parties, right? Even when you're young, don't be afraid, right? You also have some value to add, right? I think be authentic and be genuinely interested in the person that you're trying to build a relationship with, understand their need, and try to find ways where you can connect with them or help them in one way or the other. I think is the best way to build organic relationships. And volunteer for nonprofit organizations. Organizations like Women ETFs is the best way, because you naturally found a community of people with either shared experience or shared interest, right? And through that way, you get connected, and you just build a relationship naturally.
That's really the shared experiences, and I think for me this is a big one, right? And you can really continue to build it very organically. Just through being a part of it. Something that I was thinking of as you were talking about that, just in general about nonprofit work, it's like you get out what you put in, right? Yeah, to your point, you're dedicating your time, you're donating your time, but you get out what you put into it. And I feel like you sounds like you from your nonprofit work get that back in spades. So I wanted to wrap up today just because I think it's so topical, right, for our guests who maybe find themselves in a situation like me where I have not necessarily been able to dedicate the time to learning as much as I should or about crypto. And clearly it's been very much front of mind recently over the last number of months as we've been in what many refer to as the crypto winter. But quite curious your thoughts, kind of where you think we are in this journey. And do we sit at an important inflection point of the crypto industry? I mean, clearly we could talk about crypto ETFs and will that ever happen for hours. We'll avoid that and just sort of think like, where are we right now? And where do you think we go from here?
Yeah. I think one thing for sure is digital asset is here to stay, right? If you look at Bitcoin, started in 2009-ish, it's more than a decade. So I think you hear less and less people saying, oh, this is still a fact. It's still a scam fact, right? The second part is also not only sort of, the crypto native people championing for it. If you look at the industry flow, right? And even if you look at all the talents from traditional finance that comes to crypto, the industry can no longer ignore customer interest and the capital flow into the digital asset space. So I think the question is no longer if digital asset will be part of the industry future, but how they will continue to shape it, right? So we are probably still in the early stage, right? As you can see, even probably like ETFs, when ETF first started, right? Yeah. I think there are still a few things that need to happen to drive the future more mass adoption. So one is the technology itself, right? So you probably still hear about hacks and other, cybersecurity issues. I think it's just a natural progression, right? As the technology matures, I think some of the sort of the current constraints will be fixed as we mature in technology. The second is the asset class itself, right? So there's a lot of debate around whether there is a place in the asset allocation for crypto as an asset class. So as this asset class mature, right, as you can see that there are, when you think about the biggest challenge of TradFi to DeFi, right, is how do you even put a valuation on this digital asset, right? After we did all the research, right, whether it's in CoinDesk or in Fidelity right now, it depends, right? Depends on the type of asset class, the type of the use case. It depends on how you are generating revenue, but also more importantly, it depends on how the value is accruing to the token holders, where they all have different type of tokenomics. So I think the asset class need to mature to in a way that we can put a relatively I would say there's going to be a model that can evaluate the asset class And the valuation will be driven by macro, but less so. It will more be driven by its intrinsic value. And lastly, the investors need to mature, right? And I think a lot of the asset managers, including us, are playing a very big role, just like how we educate clients in the ETF land and how they can use ETFs as building blocks. We need to do a lot of research and bring clients along, right, in terms of showing them how this particular asset class could address sort of the problems they are trying to solve, offering solutions for them. Because until then, again, innovation as itself wouldn't work until it actually solves a real world problem, right? So in a way, what I'm trying to do, and I'm excited about this role, is really the fact that we are thinking through all these issues, right? Realm is not building one day, and through the thinking process, we launch products, and we want to launch products that is really driven by responsible innovation and offering a solution to the end clients.
Well, I think that those listening are going to be paying, I know I will be, close attention to what Fidelity continues to do in the digital asset space with you at the helm. I can't thank you enough for being here. I think we could keep talking forever, but I want to go ahead and go ahead and wrap us up here. I thank you so much for what you've shared. I think, the couple things that I've continued to take away is, being naturally curious, the importance of diversity of thought, raise your hand. Creative problem solving, that's continued to come through in everything that you've said today, solving real world problems with innovation, and how much that teamwork and your work and donating your time has really led to what you're doing today, and appreciate the time that you've given us. I welcome our listeners to start to, if you aren't already, please subscribe to the InFLXtion Points podcast. We're available wherever you get your podcasts, Google, Spotify, Apple. And you can not only hear this conversation that I've had with Kelly today, but all of our episodes in season 1 and season 2. Certainly encourage you to also become a member of Flex Networks, where you can access these podcasts as well as our other thought leadership through the Intelligence Exchange. So Kelly, thank you again for joining us. Really enjoyed the conversation today.
Thank you, Jillian. I really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you.
The information contained in this recording is provided as is for educational and informational purposes only and should not serve as the basis for any trading or investing decisions. Flex Networks makes no representations and disclaims all express, implied, and statutory warranties of any kind to any viewer, listener, or other third party. Neither Flex Networks nor any of its affiliates make any endorsement of any particular company, security, product, or financial strategy, and nothing contained in this recording should be construed as investment advice. Investors should undertake their own due diligence and carefully evaluate companies before investing.